Hello, and welcome to episode 63, I believe, of My Dog Will Eat My Face. I figure it's a good sign when I start to lose count, even though it's printed in another page. I'm just too lazy to go check. But I believe it's episode 63 nonetheless. Anyway, within this episode, I want to discuss what I feel is my crossing of the Rubicon, so to speak. A new world in which I have to live in, a new normal that I must endure. It is extraordinarily painful and not me, to say the least. It doesn't mesh with my personality. It's a matter of unique emotions, let's put it that way, that come when you are in hospice, you know you're dying, and you know you've taken a big step forward towards the direction to the finale, which is frankly a finale I, of course, don't want to have. But that being said, in this podcast, I hope to address that, as well as the emotional side of what it's like to deal with these changes of what appears to be a new normal. So, I hope that I can share some of those feelings effectively. Effectively is the key word. I am not very good at expressing emotions, I'll be blunt. So we shall see if I am okay with expressing myself in this episode. So I beg you, dear listener, to at least be kind as I go into the thunderdome of public discourse on the internet. But all that being said, what I have published here is absolutely true. It reflects my feelings and my fears and what I feel I can expect and what I can expect relatively shortly. And this new normal, this new world order that has taken over my well-being. And so from there, I say, let us begin to explore those things that are, for me, some of the more difficult things to explore. First of all, I have to add some sort of disclaimer to my summary of what it's like to be dying. I am in many cases an anomaly. I'm not unique by any means, but certainly an anomaly in that I am facing death at a relatively young age. You see, I'm only 43 years old. It's not like I'm 83 or 90, much like most hospice patients. So it's pretty rare when they get a young patient. And for good or for bad, with that younger body, it's generally harder to put them down. It's generally harder for their bodies to surrender to the disease and die because they are otherwise healthy. So it takes much longer to kill someone from these diseases. That is congestive heart failure and pulmonary hypertension and kidney failure. So I have that to look forward to. But keep that in mind when I describe these changes. They can happen quickly, but for the most part, it takes a very long time for them to happen because, again, the rest of my body is healthy and strong. And so, again, it's just going to take longer to put me down. Which means more podcasts. Yay for everyone. Anyway, so I have to disclaim that. This might not be well comparable to your 93-year-old grandfather or something, because it's an entirely different boat. When someone who is 93 is dying, it's way different than someone who is 43. So, with that disclaimer being said, I'll get into what changes I've experienced. And what changes I've experienced since I first said what it's like to be dying. First of all, my physical limitations are just dramatically limited. I run out of breath very quickly. I am dependent upon a far more higher level of liters of oxygen, supplemental oxygen, to be blasted up inside my nose. When I first entered hospice, I was on, I think, 2 to 3 liters of oxygen. Now, I'm on 18. And recently, even, I was up to 20 for a short period of time because I was just not getting the oxygen I needed. So, shortness of breath is a very real thing that I have to battle with every single day and with every single movement. For a long period of time, I could put up some traveling emergency tanks of oxygen. They call them emergency tanks, but they're just the regular oxygen tanks you see people have. But in the past, I could put those on a little wheelie thing and go out. I could take the dog out for a short walk. I could go across the street and get food and take it back to my house. I'd, of course, have to max out the number of liters eventually because the device maximum is only 15 liters. So immediately now, I'm on an oxygen deficit if I try to switch to this device in order to go outside. I'm a 3-liter deficit. You add in movement, you add in any sort of physical action. It could be as simple as going to the kitchen or going to the bathroom. But those little acts can unfortunately cause me to lose my ability to breathe quite easily. It's not pretty. Just recently, I tried to escort a vendor that was here to work on my tank. And I was trying to show him where a shorter walk was to another elevator. And with the oxygen in tow, I had to give up quick. I had to give up very quick. It's very unfortunate. So, I have increased shortness of breath. That's an easy thing to point out. In addition to that, I have overall weakness and fatigue that I've never had before. I fall asleep incredibly easily all the time now. I fall asleep in my chair in my office way too many times because I fall out of it. My father caught me falling asleep while standing up, getting food. I've caught myself falling asleep while urinating standing up. Not a good thing. But I'm just that weak and that tired. And also, when normally in the past, the slightest noise would wake me up, a person literally yelling at me in my bedroom is more than likely to not work and not wake me up. And that's because my body is so incredibly weakened and torn down. It's like, for me, every second of every bit of my life, I'm doing a triathlon to stay alive because my heart itself is so weak. Since the time I first reported what it's like to be dying to today, my heart's damage has more than doubled, as shown in lab results. The heart failure itself has more than doubled. So it is, by a whole magnitude at least, weaker than when I first reported on this topic. So you can well imagine what kind of weakness that could cause. It's really unfortunate. It's one of the worst things of it. I sometimes feel like I can't do anything because the little things I do just to maintain my home, take care of my dog, the day-to-day stuff. It could be that stuff alone will wear me out, and I just falter after that. So that is a huge, huge change. Another big change, and I'm not sure where to place this, whether it's physical or mental, I think it's a little bit of both, is cognitive change. And I will get into more of that with the emotional side of things, how it impacts that. But just generally speaking, I can feel my ability to cognate decline. It's very obnoxious. I lose words. I can't think of very basic words. Just yesterday, I forgot the word towel. So, it's not like I'm forgetting onomatopoeia or a bassinet. I'm forgetting towel, which is quite unfortunate. So, that has been a significant physical change. My dog is trying to squeak a toy now in the background. He's trying to get my attention. Anyway, those three things are really the biggest changes I've faced. And from that point, I'll next go over the kind of emotional changes that have plagued me. Oh, no, wait a minute. Before I even go there, I didn't name the largest, most difficult thing. The weakness in the muscles and in the body, and inability to exercise them. Remember that I went through a fall spout. And no, I don't mean like an autumn festival or something weird. I went through a period of maybe 5 days, 6 days, where I fell probably a dozen times. I fell to the ground. I fell off the bed. I fell in the shower. Fell outside the shower. I fell in my office. I was just falling everywhere. My legs would just give out. I've pretty much lost most of the ability that I have in my legs. I'm now relegated to a wheelchair, and on good days, a walker. I'm sorry, not a walker, a cane. I have a walker too, but I don't really use it. I just go from wheelchair to cane. And as my nurse said so recently, the legs are the first to go. And that appears to be what is exactly happening to me, unfortunately. That has led to numerous falls from losing control of my legs. I still, to this day, can't control my left leg fully. I can't move it left or right. I have to lift it and move it with my hand to get it to move like across the bed, say. I can actually walk with it because I can go up and down and move the shin in a rocking formation. I can walk, but sliding perpendicular to my body is something I'm completely incapable of doing. At this point, I can do it in my right leg. I can't do it in my left leg. So there's that deterioration of the physical abilities as well. So in short, it's terrible. I've lost my ability to breathe some more. I've lost my ability to go anywhere whatsoever because my oxygen needs are so daunting. I've lost general cognition. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. Where I fail to think of simple words or actions. I've lost feeling in my legs to some extent. My left leg most certainly. Can't move left or right. I have to physically move it with my arm. So I've also lost balance and ability to do simple tasks like stepping out of the shower, grabbing my phone at the side of the bed. Simple things. Where instead of doing what I intended to do, I fall, and I fall hard. Right now my body is still covered in bruises from all those falls. My entire body is in pain. I know people say that, but I can say, hands down, my entire body truly is bruised and in pain. I am covered in bruises, in gashes from these falls. Just covered. So that's a big deal. All these are big deals. And of course, as I lose these physical abilities, it goes without saying that I will also lose my emotional well-being to some extent, which I will soon here touch upon. And now I'll speak to the ooey gooey stuff, the emotional stuff. It's not ooey gooey, I gotta give it more credence. But one can imagine the emotional loss that I faced through this disease. It has literally taken away all my favorite things. Some of my most favorite things were travel, eating out with friends, having a good night of drinks and food. Sometimes we'd go to the club, party. And most certainly I enjoyed my career. I enjoyed working. I truly did. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't enjoy their job. So I was very lucky. I loved my job and loved my broader career. But I've lost that due to this disability. So that's really dramatically increased my isolation, which I'll touch on a little bit more later, because that's going to be a very important topic for my well-being pretty soon. But let me continue first here. So losing my favorite things has been taken away. I still have other things that I enjoy. I still have joy in life. Don't be fooled. I'm not living in misery. But I did lose my most favorite things. They'll never come back. That's just heartbreaking. That is just absolutely heartbreaking to me. Also, the inability to physically do anything. It's just a position no person would ever want to be in. I'm terrified of it getting worse, or I end up just stuck in bed all day. Told by my nurses that that's the next step, probably. They're really optimistic folks, aren't they? No, I've told them from the get-go I like it given to me straight. I don't like pussyfooting around things. I said, just tell me like it is and be bold and brave and just say it as it is. That's how I want it. So that's why I get these non-emotional reports from my nurses and doctors. So don't go blaming them. I told them I prefer it that way. And it's true, I do. But anyway, so on top of that, I mean, for God's sakes, one of them was dinner with friends. I've now lost those friends. I have nothing to replace that with that's of similar merit. I've tried to invite some over, but that's all failed. It's not like going out to a nice restaurant. Even if I could get nice restaurant food here, delivered or picked up, it's still not enough for them. And so I've lost pretty much most of my friendships. Now, normally I'm quite fine with isolation, but dinner with friends was one of my favorite things. Not just dinner. And that's just gone. I got an ad the other day for some live comedy show. It's just spam. But it really made me sad. Because that was another thing I would do. I would go out and see live shows. Not just comedy. I'd see shows, I'd see operas, orchestras. I love seeing live shows too. And so that little advert that made through my spam filter really dug in. As reporting itself as another thing that I've forever lost. And all that is very sad, for sure. Like I said, I still have things I like. But before this disease really reared its head, if you asked me what my favorite things were, you'd see that they're all now just purged from my life. And that leaves me with free time, which is unwelcome. It leaves me isolated, which I generally like, or I can tolerate if it gets bad. I mean, I think I lived the fine line of being available and having friends versus being isolated, having my own me time. Whereas now it's just only me time. Me time and nurse's time. That's it. Doesn't mean I don't like having people around. It just means not that often. Certainly a number before zero. Above zero, I should say. So that most certainly leads to a depression. Now, moving towards death itself does not depress me. I can say it from my very heart that death does not scare me one bit. And I've accepted my death with total peace. I'm not afraid. And I will go into the darkness like I'm supposed to. And I won't shed a tear. I'm fine with facing my death. And I will. A lot of people will not be able to relate to that. I wouldn't have had that way of thought before I started this podcast. Just through my podcasting in the past, I've come to the view that eventually led me to having peace with death. And it's all come from, frankly, Stoicism. I never knew much about Stoicism in my life beforehand, and I didn't realize that I had some beliefs that were pinnacles of Stoicism already. So it lured me in to study it more, and it's shifted my way of viewing the world, of people, of loss, of life and death, that I've come to totally accept my own death. So that's a weird positive. I've changed my way of thinking that has been very beneficial to me. It's brought me a lot of peace, whereas otherwise I would be terrified. So for someone out there who doesn't have that benefit, I could only say start with Stoicism, see if you like it. If you don't, then do something else. I don't know what you do. Pet the dog. There you go. Pet the dog. That will give you an idea. No. If that doesn't work for you, then it is not meant for you, then I don't know what to tell you. Because I didn't know how to come to peace with death before I danced with Stoicism itself. So that's, I guess, a good thing. No, I shouldn't say I guess. That is a good thing. As a direct result of all this. So, my emotions are going to be pretty unique compared to a lot of other people's, probably. The only thing I could say is, in your own way, try to come to peace with death. And know there is no fear. That's the best I could say right now. Because the final strain, kind of relating to the lack of friends, is isolation. And that, unfortunately, requires its own segment, which I will expand on here in the following segment. Now, the final item I would like to talk about is something that has grossly manifested itself more and more as I get closer to the river Styx. I'm pretty sure soon it'll just be me and the boatman, and none other. And that's because the issue at hand is isolation. And isolation, I can say, has grossly manifested itself more and more as I've become sick and sicker. I have friends who do not want to see me. I've lost many friendships. Family is far and few between who do see me. So those family who are listening to this, I'm probably not talking about you. But overall, isolation has reared its ugly head. Now, with me, that's a particular issue. Because when I was having these falling down season, I don't know what you want to call it, when I was falling down every day, sometimes several times a day, I was, of course, living alone, except for me and the dog, who will eat my face when I die in bed. The fact that I do live alone scares my family tremendously. They really want 24-hour supervision, essentially. Safety is what they call it. Safety review, where they would literally pay someone hours to just sit with me in many cases. And I'm going to be blunt. I'm going to be more blunt here than I have been with my family, who have already talked to me about this. But I've accepted this and kind of moved forward a little reluctantly to test it out, to see what the options are, to see if maybe I'm wrong and it could be something that I could use to better my life. And unfortunately, I generally don't like the idea of someone staying with me and watching me, for fear of me having a fall or a psychotic episode or who knows what. Even though it's for safety, it really disturbs me to have someone else in my home. I've lived alone my whole life, except for the time I was married. Except that little thing. But other than that, I've lived alone the rest of my life. I was only married for 2.5 years, so it's a flash in a pan. The rest of the time, I pretty much just lived alone. Obviously not as a child, but I'm talking about in my adult years, I've lived alone. Now, being alone scares a lot of people, even the people that are not sick. I actually find myself in good company. My most favorite author, Christopher Hitchens, once wrote on this topic, where he said, some people can't stand solitude, let alone the fear that the heavens are empty, and we do not even succeed in troubling their deafness with our bootless cries. To be an exile or outcast on a remote shore. Many minds turn away in terror and seek any source of coziness. I can not turn the page. I can only say that not only when it is compared to the ghastliness of eternal paternalism, the concept of loneliness and exile and self-sufficiency continually bucks me up. I couldn't say it better myself, so I deferred to Christopher Hitchens. God rest his soul. Pun intended. I actually seek out and enjoy isolation for the most part. So, trying to find someone to watch me, to care for my safety when no one else can. One, it's incredibly expensive. But to narrow the scope of what it relates to me in this podcast, it tears the living hell out of me. It scares me to death. Literally. Bad dad joke. It does terrify me. I don't want someone in my house living with me or watching me. That just scares me. I'm so uncomfortable with that idea. So uncomfortable I can't even begin to express the ghastliness of what it would be to me to have someone watching over me. Just gives me the chills. I've always lived in a self-reliant way. So when family members offer to pick up the tab to cover the cost, that too bothers me tremendously. I've always covered my own debts, my own fees. I've never asked for money or support from family. When I was a child, I did, sure. But as an adult, I never did. So, my family is trying to get someone to watch over me. The more I think about it, the more scared I get. I have to say, when family members said that the cost quoted to us is completely unacceptable, it's way too expensive, a little bit inside me cried for joy, because that basically stuck a fork right in the wheel of the process and brought it to a grinding halt. So I was happy with those results. But on the other side, my family is terrified that I live alone. What if there's something to happen again? What if I were to go into another season of falling? What if I get stuck? I did agree to wear the emergency bracelet that they have where you can call people if you fall. I forget what it's called. And I'm wearing it. I'm wearing it right now. That's a small price to pay. So there's something there. It's not me trying to be a jerk. I can accommodate in a way that I can. And I felt I did with wearing the life alert, or whatever it's called, button and sensor. That's the least I could do, and I think it's fair. But having someone with me physically staring at me, watching me, just sounds grotesque. All those things that buck up Christopher Hitchens buck me up as well. So losing that self-sufficiency is terrifying. As my cognition gets worse or the disease progresses, my self-efficiency is going to get worse and worse. Like just there, you heard me stutter for no reason. And I do not want my family to suffer in fear. So I'll play it out. We'll see what kind of offers we get, and maybe we can come to something that I find acceptable. But the increased isolation, at least, which is what came with the disease, is at least minimized by my own acceptance of it and my general love for being alone. So we're just gonna have to wait and see how that plays out and how I slowly lose my self-efficiency. That's the most terrifying part of the disease to me. It's going to get worse before it gets even worse. So as I look back at the changes that have become, it's obvious to me that I'm well on my course that was prescribed so long ago. And I'm on the march towards that great abyss. And there's no way to stop it. And these symptoms between now and then are definitely not a pleasure cruise. The falling, the shortness of breath, feeling like you're drowning in your own body is what it is. The falling because your muscles just give out randomly. You go down. I still can't move my left leg properly, left to right. I have to pick it up with my hand and move it. It's really a nightmare. Especially when it comes to the possibility of someone watching me or living with me or anything like that. I'm involved because I want to see if there's some sort of compromise. But I can't wash the old taste out of my mouth for it. We'll see how that plays out. But I do thank you, good listener, for chiming in this week and listening to my short best description that I can give to what it's been like for me on the march to death, revised from the first description. I'm sure there will be more to come as episodes and phases come. I sure hope I'm able to update. But we shall see. So anyway, I do thank you, good listener, for chiming in and listening to my babble. I seriously appreciate it. Wherever you are, be sure to click on follow to follow the podcast and to turn on notifications so you're notified of future podcasts. Just clicking follow will not notify you of new episodes. You generally have to go further and click notifications to turn on. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes you have to select it through an ellipses menu, or you have to select it through any other menu. I don't know, it depends on your platform. But look for it where it says notifications and make sure it's turned on. And if you really wish to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/mydogwilleatmyface. I'll, of course, provide the link in the description. So with that, I hope to be in touch as things progress. Please wish me goodwill and luck, and I'll report the changes as they come. But for now, I must say, auf Wiedersehen.